Dusan, the favorite son, who's watching how the West was won.
My name is Dusan Vasiljevic, and on behalf of the Green Table, Yugoslavian environmental non-governmental organization, I would like to use this opportunity to give some more details, some more light on the impact of NATO bombing Yugoslavia to environment particularly. Well, I think that everyone is more or less aware of the fact that the bombing did make quite a lot of damage to the environment, particularly in Yugoslavia, because for the 79 days, as much the bombing had lasted, we did have quite a lot of consequences in many aspects. Well, I would like to highlight the chemical pollution in the first place and several of very dangerous spots in Yugoslavia that has been hit and polluted not only the Yugoslavia itself, but also much wider area, the region, I should say. There have been several chemical and petrochemical plants hit during this bombing, which I can say it's Novi Sad in particular, and then Pančevo, which was, I think, the worst one. However, apart from that, that has been Milan Blagojevic, it's a chemical factory in Lučani, and then a Barić factory nearby Belgrade, etc., etc. During all this bombing, a huge amount of toxic materials had been released to area. Even in respect and in accordance to the UN information that have been confirmed, over 135,000 tons of chemicals has been spilled all over Yugoslavia. Of course, the most part of them has been spilled in Pančevo. There have been several issues, several chemicals in Pančevo, like vinyl chloride monomer, which was the most dangerous one. Then also the mercury as a heavy metal, then chlorine, then hydrochloric acid, and so many other things. All of them polluted the air, soil, and water. And we could say, for example, that the Danube itself is now that river downstream from Pančevo on. The people should know that, for example, rivers are remembering things by their bottoms. When the heavy metal drops down to the very bottom of the river, it stays there for long time, for many years, and pollutes the water afterwards. You can't get rid of that. Then, when the vinyl chloride monomer is in question, it's one of the most dangerous toxic chemicals ever existing. It's a cancerogenic in the first place. And also it disrupts the cells inside. So the consequences are very heavy. It's a liver disease, kidney disease, and of course cancer itself. Then I mentioned the mercury. It has been spilled 8 tons of mercury. The 8 tons of mercury could pollute even bigger river than Danube is. Apart from all it, the chemical pollution could be also considered in respect to the distribution and transformer plants that has been also hit during this bombing. Some of those transformers used the PCBs, particularly pyrrolene. It's a commercial name for some of those PCBs. The PCBs are mineral oils that are used to cool the transformers. The PCB is the most toxic existing material at the moment. 1 liter of the pyrrolene, which is a PCB, could pollute 4 million liters of water. Not mentioning when burning, it is also producing a very toxic gas. So as far as now, we know that the PCB, thinking pyrrolene particularly, has been used in Sartid company in Smederevo nearby Belgrade, then in Kragujevac, and then also in Bor. It has been detected residues of pyrrolene in all of those places. For example, in Pančevo, which has several factories hit there, the vinyl chloride monomer reservoir is, of course, sited in the very circle of the factory. The factory is made, most of it is made in the United States. So no particular exploration or intelligence should have been used to detect where to hit to destroy factory. They say that after the first attack to a factory, it was disabled fully. However, the very reservoir was hit on the other attack. There was no need to hit again the factory disabled in full the first time. There were two reservoirs. In fact, one was full, one was empty. Just the full one was hit.
Green beer you're peddling just ain't any good.
But it's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be bought.
I'm not buying any.
Don't worry about it, Pops. We won't come back.
And how's everyone at your house today?
They're fine.
Your mama well?
She has a little cold.
Oh, she does, huh? I'm sorry to hear that.
But she'll be all right.
There you go.
Thank you.
Oh, that's all right, sweetie. You be careful crossing the street. And you tell your mama that...
Mister! Hey, mister! Wait! Mister, wait! You forgot your fridge!
Only what could happen after that. The factory wouldn't work either with or without this. But what could happen is a mass pollution of the whole city. Fortunately, the wind was blowing the other direction, so the city was not in danger in that sense that it should be, or could be. Then also I can say something else. For example, the soft bombs. Firstly called the graphite bombs, used the first time in the Iraqi war. We had the opportunity to be the first place the new generation tested, which have not been the graphite bombs, in fact. They are made, this is in fact the cluster bombs, with the small containers filled with small coils wrapped with silicon threads. The silicon threads were covered with aluminium to achieve the conductance, to be conductive. Then when this cluster bomb explodes over some distribution, transformer plants particularly, then a kind of web has been made, and web falls over the transformer plant. Not only just the wires, but all those switches, etc., etc. And it adds to, because these small particles are they adhere to the particles or parts of the distribution plants and switches, etc. You can't. It's a kind of a solid water. It's the same effect. The effect is the same as you would take huge amounts of water thrown to these distribution plants. Then it will cause shortcuts, etc., etc., and all these plants goes out of operation. So, but much more of it, of this material, was spread into a fog of tiny particles of those silicium parts. As you know, the glass is also made of silicium. The glass wool has been forbidden 20 years ago. It's very carcinogenic. So now then, I've been talking personally to people living in the areas where those soft bombs have been dropped. A thick fog been hanging over the area for hours. People have been breathing this, inhaling the particles of silicon inside. So we will see what the consequences will be afterwards. So this is a new aspect, apart from destroying, of course, the electrical distribution system, which has direct and indirect consequences to people and health and environment itself.
We have on our hands 30 to 35 wars being fought on the planet, most of them fought with American weapons. We have on our hands weather modification as, quote, a force multiplier. The Air Force swears that it will, quote, own the weather by 2025.
United States military project launched in the early 60s, named HAARP project, was exploring possibilities of use ionosphere in military purposes. This project assumes extra charging of ionosphere, destroying the ozone layer in aim to achieve extremes in weather, like very big hailstones, big and high rainfalls. Then also you can find extremely big electrical charges, which are very, very unusual. All what did happen here for during the bombing and afterwards.
We have this lovely installation on the northern oil slopes of Alaska called HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, which uses the gas from that very rich oil deposit, the natural gas, to power an enormous generator which beams electromagnetic pulse into the ionosphere.
NATO admitted, after the end of the war, that during the 79 days of the airstrikes, 35,290 air sorties has been over Yugoslavia. This was the air warplanes that they are flying on the heights between 10 and 15 kilometers, exactly where the ozone is. The war machines are not commercial ones. They are not taking care about the environment. They eat ozone literally. So even in accordance to the NASA official site and exploration, there is no ozone over Balkans, just few percent of it, which is disastrous. Well, however, this ozone hole is moving from Yugoslavia towards northwest Europe, so everyone would suffer from it.
Last December, they had an odd snowstorm in Phoenix, Arizona. On December 7th, the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. And I suppose there was some significance attached to that. But a violent snowstorm hit the area, a very, very rare thing. And there was no wind. And furthermore, the snow was falling horizontally with no wind. And a guy, a very, very thoughtful guy, said something extremely wrong and evil and distorted is happening here. And he took his four-wheeled vehicle and he climbed a neighboring peak and he looked down and the snowstorm was swirling all the way around the peak, a couple of 1,000 feet down. And up there it was calm and sunny and utterly beautiful. And it was a HAARP experiment.
The thing is that this NATO bombing made huge number of consequences and a big impact to environment in whole.
I think what's really behind the movement to nuclearize outer space is that the United States Pentagon would really like to put nuclear weapons and nuclear power plants and essentially attain mastery of outer space with the atom. We have nuclear weapons on the land. We have nuclear weapons in the ocean. We have nuclear weapons in the air. And now they would like to have nuclear weapons in outer space in order to take the high ground. And that's why we, as environmentalists, as activists, as concerned citizens, have to stop this now before it reaches the point of the militarization of outer space.
Now I'll mention something so unthinkable and so shameless and so threatening to life that I really recoil from mentioning at all, namely nuclear war fighting in Iraq and Yugoslavia. For decades, the Pentagon has attempted to narrow the gap between conventional and nuclear weaponry. If the public can be made to think that some nuclear weapons are less destructive than some conventional weapons, like fuel-air explosives, then resistance to nuclear weapons is lessened, obviously. As usual, nothing was said about consequences. Human exposure to depleted uranium, which has a half-life of over 4 billion years, inducing by exposure or inhalation cancer of the lungs and kidneys, leukemia, lymphoma, and other assorted deadly illnesses.
Everyone knows, and NATO has admitted that they have been using depleted uranium ammunition in Yugoslavia. it has been thrown about 15,000 tons of bombs here, all over Yugoslavia. And in a difference from the Iraqi war, where the depleted uranium ammunition has been used particularly for destroying the armored vehicles, military vehicles, in Yugoslavia, unfortunately, we had been the area to use all those weapons also for the other purposes, particularly for destroying big concrete sites. What people have to know, that depleted uranium is in fact used enriched uranium, uranium-235, which is used in nuclear plants and for producing nuclear bombs, for example. Enriched uranium released the gamma radiation as a result of this radioactivity it has. Depleted uranium, which is in fact waste, is uranium-238, and depleted uranium radiates alpha rays. The alpha rays are truly less penetrable than gamma radiation is. However, the alpha radiation is 20 times more dangerous for living tissue. The nuclear waste is, in fact, the depleted uranium. They say that the depleted uranium weapons and ammunition is produced because the uranium itself, depleted uranium, is the most dense material in the world. It's 1.7 times more dense than the lead is. So saying if we put depleted uranium on the very top of our ammunition, it will be more penetrable. It is, of course, nonsense, because the contemporary explosives are so strong that even if the ammunition has no top at all, it will be penetrable sufficiently. However, as saying that the depleted uranium is in fact nuclear waste, it's a very good idea to get rid of nuclear waste. On the other hand, you then, of course, engage the war industry, making new bombs, new ammunition with depleted uranium, and at the same time you get rid of something very, very undesirable. For example, you probably know that the cost of dumping nuclear waste in some other countries is about 2,000 per ton, which is, of course, done all over the world. In undeveloped countries, the Bosnia is full of nuclear waste dumps. And I'm very much afraid that Kosovo would be as well. Because if you find there increased radiation, why don't put the nuclear waste as well? No one can detect it. And the Kosovo, geographically, it has big mountains, caves, etc. It could be hide very good. I don't say it will be. I'm very much afraid it should be, or it could be. Well, what happens when one of those bombs hit the target? The brisant explosive, which is inside of these bombs, develops high temperature, burning the uranium on the very top of this bomb. And then the fine radiating mist with the particles about 1 up to 3 micrometers are spreading all around. These particles could be spread in the radius for about 10 kilometers from impact spot, even without the wind. So when one respires this fog, then you get the particles inside your body and expose your body with the radiation from inside. There where comes this very dangerous thing. As a difference from the gamma radiation, which we can say it's a static one, because only the uranium itself radiates from the very spot. This alpha radiation from the depleted uranium ammunition, in fact, moves over the area, and then it enters to the food chain as well, to water, soil, even in the air. Once you get these depleted uranium particles in your body, they stay there. You can't get rid of them. And they move into in your body. Well, they mostly go through kidneys and also to liver. And as a result, we will get increased amount of cancer.
This one has no head. This one has her legs fused together. Another child has no limbs at all, and tiny buds on her misshapen chest. Another child has no eyes, just flaps of skin over the empty sockets. Another has a huge water-swollen head and no brain. Another child has no natural openings in her body at all and no sexual organs.
There are times when great nations must go to war. So there will be a future for war correspondence. And I suspect that technology will rule the day. There'll be, instead of one cameraman on board, there may be no cameraman on board, and 40 cameras scanning 360 degrees, and lots of pictures coming in, and nobody knowing a goddamn thing about what is actually happening.
I mean, the technology will obviously change the way wars are reported. But I don't see war correspondents assuming a different role than they have in the past. I think what's changed is that for the first time in human history, those forces that are arrayed against us will get their hands on cruder versions of the apocalyptic weapons we possess. And that will thrust human society into a dimension that we have not seen. And that frightens me deeply, because we as a society have lost touch with what war is.